In this video, I've gone dangerously cool. It's a Volkswagen 1600 Fastback, better known perhaps as the Type 3. So it is the bigger Beetle. It is the Volkswagen Type 3 here in 1600 form. That engine came along at the same time as these Fastbacks. I think that was 1965. Don't quote me on that. I'm struggling to retain facts at the moment. This trip has been going on for a very long time. This is a TS, but yeah, the important bit is the Fastback element going on here. This is the pre-facelift version, which has a much more pure design going on with these little dainty fins. They revised the styling a few years after this one was built and put big lamps on, and yeah, they didn't look as good. Obviously, being Beetle based, we've got a rear engine, so there's some cooling fins for that, but very classy shape. So nice to find one in bone stock condition. No slammage, no big rims, no Subaru engine. It's all good. It's just, you know, even the paint is not perfect, but I love it. I love it. It's kind of a sign of age, really, isn't it? I expertly get my shadow into the shot. So the Type 3 came along because Volkswagen had great success with the Volkswagen Beetle, but realised that people wanted a larger car. So when these cars came on the market with a 1500 engine, the Beetle was still only 1200cc. So that was already quite the improvement. Flat 4 engine here at the back, and we'll have a look at that momentarily. In 1965, like I say, they upgraded to a 1600cc engine and introduced this fastback shape. The earlier ones were notchback, or you could get the variant, which was an estate version, known as the squareback. I've seen one today. I'm going to go and see if we can find it again and park next to it. The fastback was always a bit controversial, a bit of a lumpy shape, but I think it works well, especially on these earlier versions. It just suits the shape a bit more. Oh, let's just quickly talk about suspension. It is very much Beetle origins. So we've got torsion bar suspension. The main difference being the early Beetles actually used a torsion leaf. So a bar made up of leaves of metal. Go away, traffic. Whereas this has proper round section torsion bars going on. So torsion bar suspension all round, platform chassis, and rear mounted air-cooled engine, which we should probably take a look at if I can remember where the lever is. I have a feeling it's in one of the door shuts, and it probably isn't this one. No doubt it was a lot easier on left-hand drive, because I believe it's in that door shut. Let's go and have a look. Good solid clang, build quality, very much a Volkswagen thing, and here we go. I believe that is our release. Oh, so good the door won't shut. There we go. And if we lift, aha, we don't see anything because the engine is hidden under here. So they had to rework the engine to fit it under the floor like this. So you'll see we've actually got a decent boot here at the back, and here is our engine. Not all that much fun to work on, I imagine, especially getting to spark plugs and things. I can't even really see where the spark plugs are. But the original Beetle had a fan that was up quite high with a dynamo on top of it. So here they've rejigged it. The fan is now driven directly off the crankshaft. Got a dynamo sitting over here, so it's lower profile. That's what enabled them to make an estate version. See, we've got twin Solex carburetors as well. That helps keep it all low as well. So one each side. Auto chokes, I believe, were used on these, which was pretty early use of that. But then the Type 3 was the first German car to introduce electronic fuel injection in the 1970s. So yeah, there you go. Groundbreaking car. It's not just a bigger Beetle, really. And this mat is a pain in the backside. Has just moved. I just tuck that in. But there we go. That's load space number 1. Right, let's have a peek at the front and see where the lever is for that one. I'm guessing that's that one, probably. No, that feels like a fresh air vent. Must be that one. There we go. See, I'm finding my way around this car with you. would have been an aerial there, I think. That's what our blanking plug's about. Safety catch, because we're at the front now. And there we go, we just got just the jack here in the front. That's your fuel filler, I believe. Oh, yep, that definitely smells of fuel. So you got to open up the front and pour the fuel in, a bit like an Invacar, you might say. Spare wheel here, spare wheel that powers the screen wash, I believe. That was like brake fluid, I assume, and that will be a screen wash in there. Oh, yep. So yeah, you have to pressurize your screen wash, and so it isn't off the tire by the look of it. It is a separate system. So you go to the petrol station and you inflate your screen wash bottle. So we'll see whether the owner has done that when we jump aboard, which is probably the next stage. Here we go then. Jump aboard. It's a sea of red vinyl in here and bits of leaf, because maybe because we're heading into autumn now. And this is mostly teaching me that the sunlight is not my friend here. This door is being a bit of a pain to shut. There we go. So yeah, very classy dashboard. The Volkswagen Wolfberg horn surround. Let's see if that... No, apparently we're not going to get horn today. Never mind. The usual unlabeled controls everywhere. What's that one? That feels like it's probably lights. Or maybe that one's lights. Who knows? Maybe that's... that'll be wipers. That feels like 2-speed wipers, and this, I reckon that's screen wash there. We'll get to that in a moment. Cigarette lighter, I would assume. Yep. And interesting little widget there on the I think that's some sort of magnetic foam mount. It's a little ashtray that looks like someone's tried to seal shut. Bit of sun damage on the dashboard because this car has lived in Australia all its life. Speaking of which, this car was assembled here. I'm trying to make sense of the history. I'm not sure I've got it entirely planned out. I haven't had a huge amount of research or didn't have much internet last night. I think Volkswagen's Type 3s were actually fully built here for a short period, but I think they then stopped and then just started assembling completely knocked down kits. And this is one of those. We've got heater controls variously. That might make some sense to someone. Of course, they're not labelled. We've also got heater controls down here as well. And yes, God knows what they do as well. It's all good times. A very sort of wobbly gear lever. The pedals are all floor mounted, and very long travel on the clutch. Look at that. And yes, they are a bit dainty. I've already hit the brake pedal with the clutch once, and I can confirm that gets quite exciting. Floor mounted throttle pedal also. If we go through the gears, so first is there, feels fairly precise, and then you have to be very careful going into second because that's reverse. So you've got to just let it find its way down to second, up to third, and then down to fourth. Obviously the handbrake isn't usually there when you're changing gear. The seats are pretty comfortable really for vinyl. They do tip forward when you pull the release handle to give access to the rear. So I think we probably better go and have a look there next. So this bit is always fun. I think the latch is slightly broken because I seem to be able to tip the seat quite readily. Now I can jump in, squeeze myself into the rear. They never had rear doors on the Type 3. The Type 4 that came later was bigger again. That did have some rear doors, but it's a little tight back here, even though this is a bigger car. Although this seat seems very broad, I think they could probably take a bit off that and still offer some space, but reasonable headroom, not the most generous perhaps. Big parcel shelf here. That's a mounting for Australian baby seats that you need. That apparently they don't recognise Isofix as being any good. A little ashtray here, little armrest. It's quite a pleasant place to sit. Right then, should put on the ignition, because first of all I just want to see if the screen wash will work. That's a negative, Captain. We don't seem to have screen wash working, or maybe it's that button. No, don't know. There's a mystery button here. I don't know what that does. Maybe it's a headlamp flasher. I don't know. There's also a mystery button there, but I think that's an adjuster for the clock. So am I right? That is wipers. That's enough to report that it's a good wiping pattern, but there will be a triangle of doom if the screen wash was actually there. But there is no screen wash, so we won't worry about that. On wipers, oddly, all the pre-facelifts had wipers in this layout, with the wipers set for right-hand drive, whether they were left-hand drive or right-hand drive. They flipped it over for the facelift ones. So most of the facelift ones have wipers set for left-hand drive, even if they're right-hand drive, which is a bit weird. Ah, that's a hazard light switch, I think there. But I've just noticed that wiper blade is actually coming off, so I'm going to sort that out before we go for a drive. Now this is Melbourne, so there's a fair chance we might need the wipers at some point. 4 seasons in one day was apparently written about here. I'm not sure if that's an actual case, but it certainly could be true. Song by The Crowded House, a very fine song it is too. The driving position, the pedals are quite offset. There's a lot of wheel arch intrusion. So as we sit here, it's the brake pedal that's directly under my left foot and the wheel arch that's under my right. So I've got to camp my feet across and remember that. Always start with the clutch down and the immobilizer turned off. And there we go, the fearsome 1584cc engine fires into life. Exactly the same engine that was fitted to the Volkswagen Splitty I drove in Sydney. Pretty decent turning circle and straight into speed humps. So because the engine's so far away, it helps give the Type 3 a feeling of refinement that you might not necessarily expect. Oh, great excitement. There is a SsangYong approaching. Woohoo! Oh, it is the pickup. Oh, excellent. So she picks up quite well for a mere 1584cc, I think. There's not really anywhere to put my foot, not helped by the fact there seems to be some sort of wire basket atop the transmission tunnel. But that's fine. Get away from these speed humps, because not only is the suspension quite bouncy, but so is the seat. So speed humps do have you bouncing around in your seat a little. Ah, watch out, little bird. Especially as my horn doesn't work. Sneaky round the speed hump. So the driving experience is pure Beetle, really, just in a slightly larger package. So you've got the same sort of chirrupy engine thrumming away at the back, the same terrifying handling should you decide to push on a bit. Simple swing axles at the back, because that's the cheapest way to do independent suspension. But both the Type 3 and the Beetle later in the 60s gained a semi-independent rear suspension. Sorry, a fully independent rear suspension by semi-trailing arm. It began with the semi-automatic versions. That's why I'm getting my semis in the wrong place. And you have to be a bit careful with your semis. This one does have a slightly sporty exhaust on it, but it's not too overbearing. It just helps it breathe a little more easily. Fairly decent amount of torque as well, so it's a nice engine. It pulls very cleanly. Test it over the level crossing, and yeah, a bit bouncy, but we're away. So generally, while the handling is to be respected, I mean, you can chuck them around without any impending doom. Nice Volkswagen there as well. That may have appeared in a previous video. You just have to be a bit careful in the wet. But the benefit of the rear engine is superb handling. Oh my gosh, there's a Jaguar XJ limo there. I'm going to have to come and have a nose at that. I suspect a Leyland P76 under the cover. And of course the air-cooled engine is very simple, so you haven't got to worry about overheating or any of that sort of nonsense associated with water-cooled engines. I think it's that simplicity. People didn't have to worry about stuff. Make sure it's got oil in it, and that's kind of about it. The steering is a little woolly. It is by a steering box, so there's a bit of play in it. And you know, this isn't in the first flush of use. It's on 95,000 miles, but I've no idea if that's first or second time around. Oh, that's reverse. What a stupid place to put reverse gear. I really like the noise though, it's a really good noise. Brakes are all drum and yeah, not the most responsive that you'll ever encounter. They work after a fashion. Just don't expect too much of them. Oh no, I'm losing to a Peugeot 308. Oh, it's okay, I want to lose because very quickly we're just going to pull in here just to show you a square back. So there you go, Fastback meets notchback, and I think some of them were available as panel vans as well. So yeah, that's also a pre-facelift one, which is all good. It's certainly a very simple, easy car to drive once you get used to the controls. There's offset pedals and a slightly offset gear change. I think it's slightly more diagonal than you might expect, much like a Beetle really. But because of autobahns, these cars were kind of set up for comfortable cruising, even if they can't cruise all that quickly really. I suspect 50 miles an hour or 50-60 is probably quite fast enough, really. Not that we can do that at the moment. The view down the bonnet is remarkably similar to a Porsche 911. The bonnet drops away between the two prominent front wings. It just kind of emphasises the lack of radiator, highlights the differences going on here. But yeah, both the clutch and the brake pedal need a good shove and move quite a long way, so that's a little disconcerting at first. I think the more generous exhaust gets rid of the typical Beetle chirp which these cars made. I never knew whether they engineered that in or if it was just a fluke, but the Volkswagen Beetle actually sounded like a Beetle. You can see why these cars work so well in America as well, because they just get on and do it. It pulls very cleanly. I've not had any hesitancy. It just drives very well, as did the Splitty I drove in Sydney. So the production of these cars ran until 1973, at which point Volkswagen had switched to front-wheel drive. So all but the traditional Beetle were killed off. But these cars had never sold as well as Volkswagen hoped. I mean, to be fair, they sold 2.4 million Type 3s, so that doesn't sound that bad. Bearing in mind Citroën sold 3.8 million 2CVs and 1.4 million Dianes, so 2.4 million is a pretty decent production run. But compared to the tens of millions of the Volkswagen Beetle, it was a bit lackluster. Which is why Volkswagen decided to go, okay, then we'll adopt this front-wheel drive stuff that everyone... Oh, the reverse is going on about. Oh, here we go, 80 kilometers an hour. Oh yeah, that feels no bother at all. I will do it at my window to try and reduce the wind noise somewhat. Well, there is a fair bit of wind noise just because of the shape of gutters, the exposed wipers, I guess. But yeah, you could comfortably do this all day, and I suspect a little more. Not too much more though, for there is a police car ahead. I wonder how much more they were doing. Oh, it's a tray back. I suspect it was doing a lot more. The Holden Commodore as the police car. I don't know what the police are going to do now that there are no more Commodores. Yeah, this is just happy motoring, it really is. I can't say it handles with any great accomplishment. When you go around a roundabout, which we are about to do, it doesn't encourage you to give it some. And if you go and watch historic Nürburgring footage of people doing track days back in the 60s and 70s, you will see plenty of these falling over and rolling because they're just so unstable when you really push them hard. So the best thing to do is not push hard. I mean, it's already rolling a fair bit and feeling a bit wobbly. You certainly don't ever want to lift off when cornering in one of these. No, just take it easy and enjoy this very classic driving experience. Well, there we go. That was the charming and delightful Volkswagen Type 3. All the more amusing because yesterday I drove an HSV Maloo with over 400 brake horsepower. What a contrast, but I enjoyed that just as much. That is proper classic motoring, and the poor Type 3 has been often overlooked in history, and quite wrongly. They are very charming cars to drive, so nice to see one stock. So I should say, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe before you go. Don't forget the HubNut store for all the lovely merchandise at hubnut.org, and I will see you in a future video. Farewell. Jumping in with a quick clarification, all Volkswagen Type 3s built in Australia were assembled from knockdown kits, so now you know. Oh wow, I've only just discovered that the main beam is by this little switch on the back. It's a very noisy relay. Not that you can really see the main beam light, but that is main beam on. Oh, don't worry, I came back. That is a remarkable sight. I think that might be a Chrysler actually under the cover. I welcome your thoughts on the matter, but I think that wheel trim said Chrysler, so I'm going to say it's Chrysler. Bonus drive!